Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has hidden unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure, or admire an old one. What will we find today? Let's dig in. Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
When you go in and get a new job, they don't usually throw you in and say, sink or swim. Well, I had one that did, but it wasn't a very good experience, and it sure didn't last long. Most employers either provide training or make sure the person that they hire is already trained for a specific job they'd hired them to do. God's the same way. He plans some very specific on-the-job training for us. As I've heard my pastor say, He prepares us for what He has prepared for us. In the Gospels, we see Jesus preparing, training His disciples. He has some very intense jobs for them to do. And at one point in His ministry, He turns His focus from teaching the crowds to teaching His disciples. He was still healing people, traveling around and teaching, but He taught the people with parables that they didn't understand and started putting the disciples in impossible positions so that they would have to turn to Him and learn to trust Him completely for who He was, God. He involved them in His work, stretched their faith, and took full advantage of teachable moments. Matthew 14 details two specific teachable moments that grew His disciples. The one we'll discuss today is known as the feeding of the 5,000, though the number of people was probably closer to 20,000, counting women and children. Jesus had just heard of his cousin John's beheading, so He withdrew to a quiet place with His disciples to be alone. But that mega crowd showed up. The passage said that Jesus had compassion on them and healed their sick. That was one thing Jesus taught His disciples that day. He modeled compassion and putting others' needs before His own as He set aside His me time, really just postponed it, to touch those around Him. He didn't treat the people as a distraction, but as those He loved and cared for. When His disciples came to Him, asking for Him to send the crowd away so that they could go buy food, Jesus could have just snapped His fingers and everyone would have had something to eat. But He didn't. First, He challenged the disciples to give the people something to eat themselves. Of course, they acknowledged that this was just impossible. They couldn't do it. Then He asked them to bring Him what they had, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. They learned that when things seem impossible, just give God your best and watch what He's going to do with it. After He broke the bread and blessed it, Jesus allowed them to participate in the miracle, not only by passing out the food and seeing it multiply, but by gathering the leftovers afterwards, 12 baskets full, one for each of them. Maybe they even ate some of those leftovers for the next couple of days, reminding them of Jesus' abundant provision. When God wants something done, He could just do it. And sometimes He does, but most of the time, He gets us involved. He puts us in impossible situations where turning to Him is really the only option. And He gives us the privilege of being a part of His amazing works as He teaches us and trains us. How has God involved you in His work recently? How has He trained you through it?
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. Also, if you'd like to share a treasure God has given you by doing an episode, please contact us. You can listen to other episodes on our website, which you'll find in the description below. Thanks for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.